Welcome to CR Conversations, hosted by Ryan and Christina Palma of CR Photos.
We're professional photographers who survived the unpredictable and grueling path that took us from rudimentary dreamers to fully self-employed business owners. From sleepless nights of editing to daring leaps of faith when quitting 9-to-5 jobs, we kept pushing for the dream to become reality, and we did it together every step of the way.
Amazingly enough, our marriage also survived that journey.
In our 15 plus years in the industry, we've acquired a wealth of information that goes far beyond camera settings and marketing do's and don'ts.
We've also piled up countless stories, affectionately called Uncle Bob stories.
We'll be leaking those one episode at a time.
Don't worry, names and places haven't changed to protect the guilty.
So welcome to CR Conversations. We hope you're ready to take a deep dive into life behind the lens and so much more. Hi guys, welcome to today's episode. It's going to be a short and sweet one, but we are happy to be talking about this. This is going to be a great resource for photographers as well. If you are trying to help your clients decide whether or not they would want to do a first look on their wedding day. And to all of our clients out there, this is going to be a complete breakdown of what it looks like to do a first look on your wedding day, pros and cons, all the things. So buckle up. This is going to be short and sweet, but extremely informative.
Just like you, short and sweet.
Unbelievable.
Those are two compliments. Sort of.
Sort of.
At least one is.
All right, Ryan, what is a first look?
Well, first look is when the couple gets to see each other ahead of the ceremony and have kind of their own ceremonial first time seeing each other on their wedding day. So bride will see her groom for the first time in his tux, and then the groom will certainly see his bride in her new dress and all her
glory. So it's essentially they're seeing each other before walking down the aisle.
And it's generally private.
Yeah.
We picked not only an ideal spot for them to enjoy that moment, and yet ideal spot to photograph that moment.
Okay. So, I mean, for lots and lots and lots of years, people have gotten married and the first time they see each other is coming down the aisle. So why is the first look even a thing? Like, what is the history of that? Like, why is this even something we're doing a podcast about?
Good question. I don't even know that it was even a thought in our marriage.
No, it wasn't.
13 years ago.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't remember a single wedding as a child ever hearing about such crazy things.
Yeah. So we're going to run through a little bit of the history of it, and I'm going to give like a very brief overview. So as Ryan already said, when we first started wedding photography, it was not a thing. You had a very traditional wedding timeline, which went something like...
you would be getting ready. You would maybe take some photos before, but then really everything started with the ceremony.
Which was traditionally at a church.
Yep. So a lot of bouncing from location to location. And just as you said, cookie cutter, but sort of like this was the way it was. We started with the ceremony and then the festivities.
Right.
began.
And by festivities, he means, you're doing your ceremony and then you have your traditional couple hours in between your ceremony and your reception, where you would then go to whatever park or whatever location. You take your outdoor photos after you've done your formal ones at the church, and then you're going to whatever, country club your family was a part of, or really the majority of receptions were held at big ballrooms in hotels. So that was very traditional timeline for a wedding for lots and lots and lots of years.
And so the thing you would have to greatly consider on that day was people's drive time from the ceremony to the reception, also considering making sure that they did not have too much downtime in between, that they would be really bored and,
make it too quick,
or be eating McDonald's in between.
But really in general, people just kind of knew that's what was going to happen. They kind of knew, we're going to have this awkward amount of time. And it was just accepted because obviously you do whatever. You're like, okay, we're going to a wedding today. The day is, taken up. So what made all of that change? And I always say, it maps back to the dawn of Pinterest, because before, when you were planning a wedding, it was you had a few magazines you went and got, brides or whatever you're looking at. You got some ideas. If you were super crafty, you could come up with something original, but everything was very cookie cutter. And then all of a sudden there's this explosion of creativity and you seeing weddings and all these things from all over the world, which prompted the creation of solo wedding venues. And what happened with that is these wedding venues, which are beautiful and wonderful and we're a huge fan of, they're like, let's create a space to also do your ceremony. And so then the timeline of actual weddings, at least in America, changed drastically in that your ceremony was held at say 4:00. And then right after ceremony was done, everyone went into cocktail hour. And if you've been to a wedding like that, fabulous for guests.
We're hardly ever guests at weddings. Yes. I mean, we do get occasionally, we're there not working. And every time we're there not working, we're like, oh, I wonder, that thought of working can't leave us. But it is, I think it's got to be a huge improvement for guests.
Oh my gosh. It's like, there's no that awkward time. It's just, you get there and your whole day isn't kind of, I don't want to say shot because it's a privilege to be invited to a wedding, but you're not like, oh, we have to be there at 1:00 and then sit, Well,
it's kind of like you would see it back in the day. You would see people at the ceremony and then you'd hear them as everybody was loading back onto the bus or the limo.
Like, now what do we do?
You would hear conversations of, well, what do you guys want to do for the next 3 hours? Do you want to go back to our house? And then you're all in your nice clothes and stuff. And so maybe people want to, on a hot summer day, be like, let's go back to the pool. So you go back to a pool. And then you get back into it's just, it's a whole event back then. And it still happens. But,
So that's, in terms of being a guest at a wedding venue, it's fabulous. Well, what happened there is all the photographers were like, wait a second, what just happened to our 2-3 hours where we have to do all of your photos in between? And that is really where the dawn of a first look came. It was like, okay, if we're taking out all of this time that we traditionally have to do all of your photos, let's do it before. That way, we can still get what we need as shooters and photographers, deliver what the client is expecting, and then everyone can still enjoy, their wedding. So that is really where I'll say the quote unquote need for a first look came from, is when the whole industry changed with Pinterest. So that was not very brief.
Yeah. Okay. Not to prolong this, but just, succinctly stating, a first look is when you actually have your look with your bride and groom before the ceremony. You may get all your photos done, then you go to the ceremony. So you're getting your own special moment, and then you're proceeding on with the day, and it completely changes the timeline. And this is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So what does it look like to do a wedding and have a first look realistically? So I'm just going to we'll both run through what a timeline looks like on that day. And we're going to do this based off of one location. So you're getting married at the same place you are having a reception. So for us, it's in terms of relaxation, calm, stress, it goes from like 100% on a wedding day to like, almost nothing when you do a first look.
The first look is the pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm. So what does it look like realistically timeline? So this is how it goes. We typically like to show up when hair and makeup is all done. Everyone's feeling put together. We get some fun photos of the girls, Ryan's hanging out with the guys, and then we're getting the bride dressed, and then we're preparing to go out for her first look. So what we do is we start with your first look, and we do at least 30 to 40 minutes of photos just with the bride and groom. That allows for time for, if they're doing private vows that maybe they're not comfortable reading in front of their friends and family, they can do that then and have it a little bit more intimate. So we don't want to rush that. So we have control over how much time we need when you're doing a first look.
Yeah.
And that's another beauty of it. So then what we do from there is bridal party would then join after like 40 minutes.
Here comes the cavalry.
Yeah. And then it's like this moment to be like, okay, we're all with our friends and family. That stress and that anxiety of like getting through that
melts
moment.
Away even more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're like, did you cry? Did you? And then you're just back to being normal people.
Yeah. And then so you get to go through your bridal party photos. And then what we do, because there's two of us, is Ryan and I separate. He does all the guys like one-on-one photos, the guys photos. I do the girls. And then traditionally we kind of do a couple more of the bride and groom as we're like walking back to the venue or whatever is happening. And then another like plus of doing a first look is if the bride and groom want, we will then run through any family photos that we can so that they can enjoy as much of cocktail hour as possible.
Which, talking about like things evolving and changing, that's something that we've done a whole lot more this year, maybe even just a little bit last year, but that is becoming, at least for us, is becoming way more common. And again, ceremony's over and now it's just...
Yeah. And doing the family photos before does take a little bit more planning and a little bit more stuff, because then you have to make sure that those family members are on location quite a bit before they would normally need to be there for ceremony time. But in the end, it's kind of worth it. Sometimes you do have to run through a few family photos after the ceremony just because maybe grandma and grandpa weren't there, something like that. But it's way less time than you would normally need to if you didn't do all of your family photos before. So the biggest pro to doing a first look is you now have cocktail hour to enjoy with your friends, family, and your guests. Because if you're not doing a first look and you're doing everything in one location, you are not going to be there for any of your cocktail hour. Like nada.
Yeah. And can I say from our perspective, it makes us enjoy giving them that kind of day so much more because, you know, even though our job is so important for them to like have the memories captured, you don't want to take away from the day itself. Like we don't want to be the photographers that are holding dinner up, that are holding people up from spending time with their bride and groom. We want to accommodate that. So it makes it so much easier for us to be a part of helping that happen if we can do what we need to do well before everybody even shows up to the venue. So people are showing up and it's like all the quote unquote work of the day is, you know, behind us.
And again, not just us, it's behind you as the client, because when I'm going to like, you know, now transition to show you what it looks like without doing a first look, and you'll see like the pros and cons kind of. When you don't do a first look and you have everything in one location, for sure, we're going to get as many photos as we can before. So we were talking earlier about those times when we separate and do those one-on-ones, you know.
I could talk a little bit about that. All right. So as we talked about, if you're not doing the first look, this is kind of what it looks like if you're at the same location, which same location is an improvement, but there's still a lot of runaround in logistics. So if you're not doing the first look, we will try our best to get everything that we can done before your ceremony that is possible to do without seeing each other for the first time. So that means coordinating. If you're in a small venue that doesn't have a lot of different areas to run off to get photos, we have to make sure the bride is tucked away in her bridal party suite as the groom goes out with his groomsmen, gets his photos with them. And then we might have to bring him back in, hide him away, coordinate not seeing her walk out and get her photos with the girls.
The old flippity flop without anybody noticing.
Yeah. And it's a whole lot of really being careful because we don't want anybody to see. Often it's, you know, the bride doesn't want to see her dad as well before a ceremonial first look or seeing him as they go down the aisle. So there's that. Then there's the ceremony. Now they've seen each other. After that, we have that time in between the ceremony and the reception, the beginning of the cocktail hour. And typically old school way was because you have to get your photos done. The guests would be at cocktail hour while the bridal party is getting their photos done. Right. So you're losing out on a bit of time where you would have been able to mingle with the guest. And so now the pressure is to get all the photos done before cocktail hour starts, which generally happens right away, or during cocktail hour. And so you're pumping through very quickly. And sometimes you still got to do the formals. Yeah.
So when, like you said, you're not doing a first look, so you have not done any photos together before your ceremony, which means you have a lot of photos to do after the wedding. And what we require of our bride and grooms who do something in one location, no first look, you have to have an hour and a half cocktail hour. There is just no possible way that we could do everything we need to in less than an hour, because realistically, you need to be lining up for your introductions before that hour happens. So you're saying we've got to do all of your family photos, all of your bridal party photos, and your full wedding, your wedding party, and the photo of the couple. Like that, even with two photographers, that is not a likely or realistic.
And when people say they can't remember their day, this is why.
Yes.
This is why, because they're doing the ceremony and they're pulled right into the formals. And then from there, they're running off to get their session photos with their bridal party. And then the DJ is basically waiting as you walk back up to the reception hall and saying, all right, it's time to do your intros. Let's all get in line. Yeah. And so you are just
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, running from one, small event within the event to another. And so you finally sit down for, dinner, and that's your first moment, but people are still coming up to you. So you really are, you're really changing the dynamics of the day in terms of it being like nonstop, action packed, like I said, carefully, quote unquote, work to, everything's just so much more laid back, so many more moments to breathe, to take in, to, soak in what
when you do a first look, because you literally get to enjoy all of your cocktail hour. With no first look, you're not going to be there for any of it. any of it at all. And it's going to be an hour and a half. And then, like you said, the moment you sit down, you're like, oh, I can sit back and like relax a second. It's about that time to pull you out for sunset photos. So it's just this continual like bombardment. And look, I understand. We always say this when we meet with people, we run through both scenarios very realistically, and then the decision is yours. And that's kind of why we're putting this together. So everyone can hear what it's like realistically. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to say, oh, you know, I think we could maybe get your photos done in less than an hour and a half. Nope. I'm not going to say that, because if that happens by some miracle, awesome. You get to enjoy half an hour of cocktail hour. What's the harm in that? But maybe that's happened 2 times.
Yeah. I want to say this. I want to drop it right here, right now. We used to kind of hide our, bias to it, but unequivocally, we are big fans of that. And not just for selfish reasons at all. Yep. In fact, it's all for the bride and groom. Again, we just think it makes the day so much better, and it only doesn't take away, it only adds. Yes, that is people's number one thing. Oh, I don't want to take away from us seeing each other come down the aisle. And I always say it's not taking away from that moment, because it just adds another moment. They're still going to come down the aisle and see you. You still are doing that. You just have added a private moment where you're just free to be yourself. And in all honesty, it is the only time you're going to be alone on your wedding day. Yeah. And it literally, they're 2 different scenarios. You have this one-on-one moment with your bride and groom. And then the other one is this you in front of everybody that is important to you in this very special sacred spot, seeing each other again for the first time. So it's not it's an addition. It's not a takeaway. It's an addition, like no doubt. All right, let's bust through the cons of the first look. There are some. Go for it. In my mind, there's literally only one. I got another one that you didn't. Oh, you do? Okay. So and again, we're being totally honest here. There is a con in my mind. I guess there's another one. So as a photographer, shooting the closest you can to sunset is always the best lighting option, especially in the middle of summer. When you're doing a first look, clearly you have now adjusted that where you are shooting much earlier in the day. So that can present some issues. You have to find shade. You have to be worried about the temperature in the day. And really all that extra work falls on your photographer. So really you don't have to worry about it too much. But that is, a con when you're doing photos. If your ceremony is at 5:00 and you're doing your wedding party photos at 5:30, 6:00, the lighting is going to be much better than it is at 2:00 in the afternoon. Yep. Okay. So here's a plug for all you wedding event places. You guys need to plant some giant willow trees. Amen. And that will solve all the problems, because we can get under those shadows and we'll be golden. And this won't even be an issue. Yeah. So you guys get those willow trees done and we'll be back and loving your place. Yeah. What's the other con? So the other con is, and this is the one that we're now doing formals before. I really don't like doing formals twice. Oh, like getting people all there and then being like, all right, so Uncle Harry couldn't be here at this time, or Grandma and Grandpa couldn't be here that early. And so having to bring everybody, not everybody, but actually having to like the bride and groom set up again for that. I think that's something we need to iron out in the upcoming years, because that kind of is counterintuitive when that. Yeah. A lot of times that happens when a bride and groom changes their mind at the ceremony, when they're like, oh, originally they decided we just want to do immediate family and grandparents, and we did all those before. And then they're like, well, everyone's here. Let's gather all the aunts and uncles and cousins. It's not very common, but yeah, it is kind of like, all right. So make up your mind which one you're going to do. Yeah. And it's not that bad. Like, it's just a matter of, hey, this is 15 minutes that could have been left to just straight up cocktail hour. Instead, you're like, hey, come back out of that conversation. Let's get, uncle from over here. Everybody gather back up. We're going to set back up, do that over again. I'm just thinking it's an area of, as this is a new thing, ironing out and improving if you really want to get those family formals out of the way. Yeah. One thing that we failed to mention that I do think is super important about just things to consider if you've decided you do not want to do a first look and everything is going to be in one location. With your cocktail hour happening immediately after your ceremony,
the amount of planning you need to put into and communication that you need to put into making sure your family sticks around and does not go into cocktail hour after the wedding is extremely important. And we do a lot of hand holding with this with our couples. Like, hey, you need to send this text out this week. You need to send this text out today. Like, day a reminder, day of, because what will happen is this. If even just one relative you want a photo of is missing, Uncle Bob, so is Uncle Bob.
I just threw in Uncle Harry, but yeah.
And we are now waiting for him. And we can't start the photos for another 10 minutes because no one can get Uncle Bob away from the bar. Do you know how many photos we can take in 10 minutes?
Yeah.
A lot. And so what Uncle Bob just did, because he didn't follow the directions, was take 10 minutes away from your bridal session as the bride and groom. And in situations like that, because we can get a photo of Uncle Bob later, we will move on. We will not, we're going to be like, I'm sorry, we have to nix this. Like, we're moving on to the most important people here, and that's getting photos of the two of you. So that's just something to be aware of. Like, your people can mess things up.
Well, and it's so funny. We just heard a hilarious story when you talk about that and family dynamics and stuff. Somebody just mentioned that they have a family that they are ready to go. That the family is very punctual. From the one side is super punctual. So they get there. And then when they have to like wait around, they're like checking their watches, being like, what are you doing? Wasting my time. I could have been. And then the other side of the family, they have to get that like.
It's like a suggested time.
It's like, okay, no, we're going to do the formals at 12. You tell them 11:30 so that they trickle in at 12.
I have a few siblings like that. We tell them a different time for our family parties and they're still late.
Yeah. So it does take a huge amount of coordinating on your behalf before the wedding, but we'll, again, just a moment to plug why we love this so much. Yes, it takes so much, or not so much, but it takes extra work to do, but you don't want to coordinate on your wedding day. You want the day to just go. And when you've put in all the work, which everybody does ahead of time. And another thing, just talking about timeline, when you do a first look, your photographer is going to walk hand in hand with you. We do, like, we literally go through every hour of the day. Like, this is what we're doing at this time. We can plan in extra time. Hey, you have a bigger bridal party. We're going to tag in another 20 minutes to this. Hey, we want to do full extended family photos before. Okay, we're going to tag on another 20, 30 minutes. When you're not doing a first look, we literally have an hour and a half. That is it. We cannot adjust because, hey, somebody's dress ripped. And now everything's 20 minutes over. Prime rib is waiting on us.
Yeah, we can't be the ones to hold up your entire, reception. So it puts us in a lot more sticky situation because even all the planning, all this stuff, you can't add that extra what we call buffer wedding time because eventually the show must go on.
Hey, and I'll say, if you are a new photographer, be, you could be assertive about this. We are now assertive about it because we've done it so many times. And who knows? I don't know how many other people in the industry are doing this on a regular basis, but you can actually, really do your clients a favor by promoting this. We think we strongly believe. So learn about it. Test it out, try it, and you may find that you will grow a greater following.
And I say this to everyone, and I said it previously, we're going to lay out the facts. This is what a real timeline looks like, both scenarios, and then put that decision on you. Whatever you decide with as a couple, it is your day. Like you shouldn't, but at least listen to what we have to say. I think one of our best.
Yeah, I was just going to say, why don't we share a couple? We actually, as we were planning and preparing for this, we were thinking of like, who did we have do the first look that perhaps didn't want to? And one couple came to mind. And so we dug for the their review. And wow, this review is better than we could have written ourselves.
We probably should have just read this and then left it. You can read it. Go for it.
Are we sharing the names of the couple?
We'll keep it
we'll keep that private. But if you wrote this, you know who you are. So Christina and Ryan were a dream.
Oh,
I know. Oh my. Okay. All right. And then Ryan and Christina were able to help us make the decision to do a first look, which we were nervous about because we thought it would change the ceremony and seeing each other for the first time. But it ended up being the best decision we made that day, as it gave us the most intimate moment alone together that we wouldn't have had otherwise. We also still cried like babies at the ceremony. This also gave us many more stunning photos of the two of us that we truly wouldn't have had time for if we didn't do a first look.
I mean, mic drop.
Yeah, thank you very much for that we could have just started and ended with that. But yeah, and we, so this, just a little backstory on this. this couple really, I think the groom was like a little bit more opposed than the bride on doing the first look. Just wanted, the tradition, the stuff like that. I think the bride was more willing to just take the recommendation. And again, we still, even though we do believe in it, we won't push it. We'll promote it, but we want, when we feel you kind of resisting, we'll understand and we will not push for it.
We're not going to stonewall you.
Yeah, we're
whatever
going
that's
to.
called.
Yeah.
Is it stonewall or stone?
Gaslight?
Not gaslight. Gaslight you. You really want this, don't you? You really want this.
So anyways, they went back and forth on it, and they finally, the decision didn't even happen until
it was the week of the wedding. Literally, I got on the phone call with them, and they're like, okay, we're a little bit nervous about this. Like, we do want to enjoy a cocktail hour. And I just laid out like we just did both things. And they're like, okay, we're going to do a first look. And obviously, as you just heard, they're very happy with it. And we say this all the time. People say all the time, I'm so glad we did a first look. I'm so glad. And they say in the moment. Yeah. Where they're so nervous or so this, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we did this. Like, I've never, ever, ever, ever had somebody say, I wish we didn't do a first look. We've had multiple people say after the fact, I wish we did a first look. Okay. And this is another pro that you don't know about. So I get the groom out there, and it's me and the groom, me and my new friends, because Ryan's best friends with everyone. Hey, I take a little time to like kind of encourage them, share. I'd say it's my most special moment of the day because I'm one-on-one with the groom. I will give them, a little bit of my words of wisdom from Ryan on your wedding day. I don't know. Maybe, I'd love to talk to these grooms and see what you've been telling them. But like it is, they're like, they are, like I said, it's my special moment. Like I'm kind of sharing them with them, my perspective, how wonderful it is, how trying it is. How wonderful marriage is, you mean? Yeah. I thought you were talking about the first look. No. Yeah. How wonderful marriage is and how special it's going to be. And yeah, it's going to be difficult. And I don't bombard them with like, a 3-point sermon or anything, but I do encourage them. I do, I try not to actually take away from the emotion. Like, I don't want to be like, hey, bottle up that tears. I'm like, hey man, let it all out. This is your moment. And so it's, you never get to see that, which is funny. I don't ever really talk about it, but like I've had multiple times where like the guy's, he's getting teary eyed as I'm trying to actually push him into those emotions. I'm like, hey man, this is the moment. Don't hold back. Don't feel like, it's going to be you and her. Forget about me. Yeah. And they're getting all teary eyed. And it is a great thing. And we say this every time. It is a privilege to witness that stuff because we are literally the only ones who see it. And of course, like Ryan said, we're very incognito in that moment. We don't want to be the ones to make you feel, oh, the photographers are here. We want to be as private and as personal to you guys as possible. And we never rush that. But it is, the amount of relief that goes through people's minds. Didn't a bride say this is the first time I've seen you cry? Yes. A couple of weeks ago, I always ask this. So do you think he's going to cry today? And she was like, if he does, it'll be the first time I've ever seen him cry. And she saw him cry that day for the first time during their first look. And I might add, also when she came down the aisle, that is another thing. People are like, oh, it's not going to be the same. If they cried when they saw you, I think almost 95% of the time they've also cried when they come down the aisle. But more so, if they haven't cried in the first look, a lot of the grooms cry when they see her coming up the aisle. So, you know what? If there's going to be emotion, there's going to be emotion at some point. And if not, that's just who you married. It's like me on our wedding day. Oh my gosh. Did not shed a tear. This guy was like buckets. Yeah. I got an awesome handkerchief from my aunt from Ireland. And boy, I didn't think I was going to need it, but I was just giggling. I was like, why she's are you laughing crying? And I'm crying. And and it's been that way ever since. Story of our life. Okay, guys, I hope this was informative. If you still have questions, comments, or concerns, and you are our client, we have this all written out much more succinctly in our wedding guide. So please send us an email. We can send that to you. But if nothing more, just consider both options, what you want your day to feel like, and go from there. Lastly, please leave us a review. Yeah, like that one. Yeah, like that one. No, on our podcast here, if you've listened and you enjoy this, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear back from you. And shout out to our youngest listeners. I want to just let them know we love you and appreciate you listening. Judson and Eleanor, we cannot wait to see your sweet little faces again. In the meantime, please enjoy continuing listening. Keep listening. If you didn't make your mom like and subscribe, make sure you do now. Yes. And write a review.
That's awesome.
And keep listening to your favorite podcasters see our conversations.
Awesome. All right, guys. See you next time. We hope today's episode was insightful. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, as this helps others find us. If you have any questions or comments on topics you'd like to hear us unpack, please send those to podcast@crphotos.org. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, where we can be found at C_R_conversations, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a post.